everyone. Hello, Kristyn. Welcome. My name is Rupangi. I am Adult Services Library Assistant here at Yola Road Branch, and I welcome you all, virtual viewers, to our program for tonight with Kristyn Slick. Kristyn is a cooking instructor and a blogger at the Classroom Kitchen. She joined the workforce as a consultant with Pampered Chef, not just to contribute financially to her family, but also to give herself a new challenge. This was when Kristyn realized she could combine her passion for cooking and teaching. So, Classroom Kitchen was born. I will hand it over to you, Kristyn. Thank you very much for your
Awesome. Thank
time.
you. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'm really excited to cook with you guys. So as you guys heard, I am a full-time teacher. I teach middle school. It is like hold on to everything around us right now as the kids are so ramped up, teachers too. And then we had the winter wonderland today. So it was a tough day. It was a tough day keeping everyone contained. So it's so nice to come on here and really just show you guys, showcase some really cool recipes to an adult audience as well. So feel free to use the chat if you guys have any questions as we're going. We are going to be doing holidays or like holiday around the world multicultural cooking. And we're going to do 4 recipes, which is a stretch. But I want to showcase all of the different November and December holidays, not all, some of the winter holidays that happen, things that are accessible and easy to find ingredients for and then enjoy over the holidays. So we're going to do 4 different recipes. We're going to start with our Thanksgiving recipe. We're just going to go in order of the holidays. We're going to be doing a sweet potato Brussels sprout hash. Then we're going to move into Hanukkah with latkes. Then we're going to move into Christmas with some peppermint Oreo bonbons. And then we're going to finish off Kwanzaa with a creamy baked mac and cheese. So all really delicious, very soul satisfying foods. Everything too, I actually teach social studies during the day. So I do love bringing in food history to my classes. I really think understanding where the food comes from and why we have those foods for certain occasions really sets the tone for the food, and it makes it that much more enjoyable. So we're going to just jump right into our first recipe. This is a not a cook along, it's actually a demo type class. So I did do a little bit of prep ahead of time just so that it moves quicker for you guys. A little bit of TV magic along the way as well. And you guys just get the hang of what these recipes look like. Okay. All right, so sweet potato and Brussels sprout hash is going to be our Thanksgiving recipe. Now, what actually is a hash? A hash is a culinary dish consisting of usually leftovers, whether that be chopped meat, potatoes, fried onions, vegetables, whatever is kind of left over in the fridge. Now, the actual name hash is derived from a French word. I don't speak French, but I'm going to give it my best shot. It's hacher, and it means to chop. It originated as a way to use up leftovers, like I said, and in the U.S. in the 1860s, hash houses or hasheries were actually considered cheap restaurants because they would just kind of throw everything into a bowl. That's my favorite way to eat food. I love everything mixed up. I know there's people who don't necessarily like it like that, but I love like a good bowl of just mixed up goodness. So we're going to do, like I said, a sweet potato Brussels sprout hash. We're also going to make a balsamic glaze to go over the top of it. The hash itself is pretty simple and it's a base, right? So even though we're doing sweet potatoes and Brussels sprouts, if you want to use, let's say like russet potatoes or Yukon Gold potatoes or red potatoes, or if you want to add like bacon to it, or if you want to add like asparagus or different, broccoli, different veggies to it. This is just a base for it, okay? Just to kind of get your inspiration going for it, an example, okay? So I already chopped up a little bit, and I'm going to kind of continue to show you a couple different kitchen skills as we go through these recipes. Let me go ahead and drop you down. Obviously, we're doing this as a Thanksgiving recipe because these are the foods that are going to be in season at this time of year. So I already started chopping up some sweet potato and some Brussels sprouts. I left a little bit for me to show you what we're doing with this. This sweet potato was absolutely giant. actually, some of these pieces are still a little bit too big. We want them in cubes. Okay, so they're about the half of like a small Lego. Okay, that's about the size of the sweet potato that we want to go with. The smaller we chop them, the quicker that they're going to roast up in the oven as well. So some of these, like I said, I cut a little bit big, so we'll cut those in half a little bit. Okay, just be careful with sweet potato. It is a very tough vegetable, especially if they're large. Okay, so I like to make sure that my potato is always on the flat side, never try to cut it on the round side. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and cube these and then cut more in half if we find that some of our pieces are a little bit big. And we'll just add this to our tray. Our tray has already been sprayed with a little bit of olive oil spray. And then I'm going to top it with some more olive oil and some seasonings to go into the oven. Now, the seasonings I'm using are a little bit untraditional in the sense of, like, the mix might not seem like, ooh, I don't know how that's going to taste, but I promise you it is so yummy. We're going to top it actually with some synonym. Oh my goodness. I also teach language arts. We were talking about synonyms today. We're going to top it with some cinnamon and cumin. Okay. Cumin is I feel like it's a very underutilized spice. You do find it in a lot of Tex-Mex food in the US. You will find it a lot in Indian and Asian cooking as well. But it's just kind of got this nice smoke to it that will really elevate this dish overall. As far as the Brussels sprouts, I'm just chopping off the bottom stalk part, and then I'm just going to cut them in half. Some of the bigger ones I might cut down a little bit more just so that they all bake around the same time. Now, the cool thing about this recipe is, yeah, this is just like us roasting vegetables. The toppings are what make this dish really cool in Thanksgiving-y, okay? I'm hearing a lot of feedback on one of the videos. Just make sure everyone is muted just so that we get a nice clean recording. If you don't mind. If you're not a fan of Brussels sprouts, you can absolutely do a different veggie. Like I said, you can do asparagus, broccoli, whatever floats your boat. Just a nice hearty fall vegetable. Okay. So we're going to roast these at 425 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes until they start to get nice and browned. The brown is going to taste really, really good too in our hash. So I have a couple tablespoons of olive oil, and then I'm going to do about a teaspoon of cinnamon right over the top. If you're like, ooh, I'm not sure if a teaspoon is like, if that's going to be too much, then you can always back off the spice. And I'm going to do about a half a teaspoon of cumin. And the cumin, like I said, is a very good complement to the cinnamon. Makes the cinnamon savory. So we're not adding like brown sugar to this. It's going to really elevate that cinnamon flavor. And then I'm also going to do a little bit of salt and pepper. Pretty good amount of salt, I should say. And then a little bit of pepper. I love this dish for a Thanksgiving because it looks really pretty and it can be made ahead of time. So you just need to warm it up on actual Thanksgiving Day. Okay. So while this is roasting in the oven, 425 for about 15 minutes, I'm actually going to start our pan of our balsamic glaze as well. So I'll show you how to do that back at my stove top. Let me get this in the oven. And then I'll show you the balsamic glaze. Okay, so the balsamic glaze is right here in this pan. This is just actually balsamic vinegar, nothing fancy. Okay, it was probably the cheapest version of balsamic vinegar I could find at the grocery store. What we're going to do though is we're going to reduce this down, which means we're going to let the liquid evaporate, and we're going to end up with a really nice ooey gooey glaze that's going to go over the top of this hash. Let me go ahead and turn the burner on. And then we're just going to let this simmer. I'm going to check on it every so often, but this is going to take about 10 to 15 minutes to fully cook down into a glaze. The glaze, you'll notice it turns into a glaze when it's not liquidy, right? So when we tilt our pan, it's going to look like a syrup. And I'll show you what that looks like when we get to that point. Okay. Let me get that over my burner a little bit more squarely. So when this is done, when the potatoes are done, the Brussels sprouts and potatoes are done, we're actually going to flip them out of the pan so they're not in that tin foil anymore, or you can transfer them to a casserole dish. We're going to top them with some dried cherries, some pecan halves, or you can do walnuts, and then we're going to drizzle this glaze over the top of it. And it's going to be this beautiful Thanksgiving dish that we can share with friends and family. Okay. So a really easy one to start with. The Thanksgiving recipe, a hash, something again you can make ahead of time, and hopefully you get inspired to either change up the ingredients or use the exact recipe that I just showed you. Okay. Were there any questions on that first recipe, that hash recipe? We're okay?
I think we are okay.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So we'll let all of that work. We'll come back to it once that glaze is ready and the potatoes and Brussels sprouts are ready. All right. So the next one we're going to move to is in our lineup of holidays is going to be Hanukkah. And we're going to look at some latkes. Now, latkes is not about the potato, even though they're made with potato and onion. It's actually about the oil. What matters in the tradition of a latke for Hanukkah is recounting of the miracle of one night's oil lasting 8 nights in the temple over 2,000 years ago. And that was actually an author in the New York Times, Joan Nathan, actually wrote that. Now, we do normally associate latkes with Hanukkah, but in reality, actually, the latke actually descends from Italy, and they actually come from a ricotta cheese pancake. The first connection between Hanukkah and pancakes was made by a rabbi in Italy in like the 13th century, so like the 1200s. They actually served these pancakes at a Purim feast, as well as a poem about Hanukkah. And when the Spanish expelled the Jews from Sicily in 1492, the exiles introduced their ricotta cheese pancakes in northern Italy. And these cheese pancakes, because they combine the two traditional types of foods, fried and dairy, became a natural Hanukkah dish. Now, potato latkes are a little bit more recent. They happened during the mid 1800s. And the reason that they became more of a potato latke instead of a cheese latke is because there was a series of crop failures in Poland and the Ukraine, and that led to a mass planting of potatoes, and they were easy and cheap to grow. So with a lot of Jewish tradition being in those areas, the potatoes then took over that cheese latke and became a potato latke. And that's, like I said, a little bit more recent of an invention compared to the original ricotta cheese pancake that actually started the whole tradition in general. So, like I said, this is definitely made out of potatoes and onions. It has a little bit of matzo meal in it, has an egg, some salt and pepper. You usually serve it with sour cream or applesauce. But the whole point of them being a Jewish tradition, a Hanukkah tradition, is the oil that you fry it in. Okay. So let me show you how these come together. These are going to sit for a little bit of time. They do need to kind of absorb the matzo meal a little bit in them and kind of drain out some of that liquid from the potatoes and the onions before we're able to fry them. Okay. When we fry them, we are going to use about 1/4 of an inch of oil in the pan. So the potato pancake isn't, or sorry, the potato latke, potato pancakes are different. Potato latke isn't like completely submerged in the oil. We still have like kind of a top dome part. And then when we flip it, it's going to be nice and crispy and golden brown. Okay. So let me show you how to pull together these potato latkes. I say potato pancakes because I grew up on potato pancakes. I have a Polish background and my dad would make potato pancakes, which are different. They're actually made like with a batter, where this is actually, sometimes it's like a mashed potato and like a pancake batter, and you put it together and make a potato pancake, where this is actually shredded potato, fresh shredded potato. Okay. So what I like to do when I do my potato latkes is you can either use cheesecloth or like paper towel. And I shred that right into a bowl. So I line my bowl with some paper towel, and I have this really cool like veggie shredder thing. It's actually plastic, but it shreds the potatoes really, really nicely. So I've already shredded a majority of the potato and the half an onion that I need in this. And it's already been sitting in the paper towel so that it drains a little bit. If you do notice, the latke recipe is the longest recipe because it talks about using a cheesecloth tourniquet. And this is like the very, very classic way to make a potato latke. I'm doing a little bit of shortcut, okay, because I didn't have cheesecloth on hand for this recipe. So I'm kind of doing a different shortcut with it. But the recipe I included is very, very traditional, okay? So I just take my potato and I'm just going to run it across my shredder. If you don't have a shredder like this one, you can just use a coarse grater. Just be very careful when you get to the end of the potato. You can also use a food processor with a shredding disc. Oop, we're getting close. Even though this is plastic, it still can be dangerous if you're really like shoving the potato through it. Okay, I'm kind of to the end of this potato, okay? So then now that I have the 2 potatoes and the half an onion in here, I'm gonna take another paper towel and I'm really, really gonna try to press out the liquid. Okay. We don't want soppy potatoes and onions, okay? And obviously potatoes and onions are filled with liquid, so we don't want them to be all soppy when we try to go fry them in oil. Remember, oil and water don't mix. So we want to try to press as much out as we can. Just going to kind of flip these a little bit to get a little bit more of the liquid out of it. All right. So then what we're going to add to this then is a little bit of unseasoned breadcrumbs. I actually have the matzo meal, which is traditional to use in the latke. This is super easy to find in the grocery store. There usually is like a Jewish food section, and this is sitting right there. Okay, it actually looks similar to panko breadcrumbs, but this is a matzo meal instead of like a panko breadcrumb, which is made out of like a bleached wheat flour. Okay, so they are a little bit different, but they do look similar in nature. The cool thing about a lot of different heritages in food in these heritages is there's actually a very comparable type recipes in a lot of different cultures. So like I keep saying, like potato pancake. While this isn't a potato pancake, other cultures have developed it. The original latke was a ricotta cheese pancake, right? So there's a lot of crossover in different heritages and different nationalities and different traditions that really showcase similar ideas. So we're going to add about 2 tablespoons of matzo meal or an unseasoned dry breadcrumb. I actually keep these on hand specifically for potato pancakes. And then we're going to add our um, let's see. Oh, our egg as well. So we do need 1 egg. Kind of lost track of where I was for a second. Sorry, guys. Like I said, it's been a hectic week with my 6th graders. We're going to go back in with some salt and pepper as well. So a good seasoning of salt, about a teaspoon of salt we need for that. And then just a little bit of black pepper. You can mix it with your fingers or you can go in with like a spatula. I'm going to go spatula route today. Now we are going to let this kind of quote unquote marinate for about 10 minutes. It kind of creates I wouldn't say a batter, but just kind of like a binding agent for these potatoes. And then once this sits for about 10 minutes, then I'll show you how to fry them. So these are labor intensive. This is something traditionally, just like, in my Polish heritage, like we make like pierogi and kolaczki, and that's kind of like the big family thing that you make. It takes kind of an army to make them. The latkes are kind of similar. Same thing with like an Italian heritage with like ravioli or like a pasta, different, making homemade pasta. This does kind of take some time. While the ingredients are very simple, it does take some love and care to create these simple latkes. All right, so we're all nicely tossed with egg, salt, pepper, and a little bit of matzo meal. And we're gonna let this set for about 10 minutes, the quote unquote batter, okay? While this sets, we're gonna check on our balsamic vinegar that's reducing for our potatoes. And then I'm gonna start heating up our oil for this as well, okay? Any questions so far on the latkes? Feel free to post them in the chat if you do. All right.
Feel free to unmute yourself as well, whichever works best for you guys.
Yes, perfect. Okay, so I can definitely smell this. This is still very, very liquidy. So this is going to take a little bit longer to pull together. So it is getting thicker. You can see how it's like pulling to the side in a little bit more congealed format here. You can also too, if you're like, Kristen, I am not going to reduce my own balsamic vinegar. You can absolutely buy this pre-made. Actually, my favorite balsamic vinegar that is pre-made that I like to drizzle on stuff is actually from Aldi. So if you're an Aldi shopper, they have a really, really delicious balsamic vinegar there that you can use in place of this if you don't want to reduce the balsamic vinegar on your stovetop. One less thing that you have to do. I'm all about the shortcuts, right? But at the same time, now you know how to reduce balsamic vinegar. So this is reducing. The oil is heating, and the oil, we are going to make sure that is nice and hot. If you do have a thermometer on it, you definitely want it at least 350 degrees to get a really good fry on the potato. So if you don't have it, what we're going to do actually is drop a potato piece in here. And if it actually is like starts to bubble and simmer, then we know the oil is ready. The reason we want it the correct temperature is because we don't want soggy latkes, okay? If we were to put them in the oil too early, they're going to absorb that oil and then there's going to be soggy and greasy. We want them nice and crisp on the outside and nice and tender on the inside without being soggy and greasy, okay? So oil is heating, balsamic vinegar is reducing, potatoes are cooking, they're getting nice and browned. Keep in mind though, we did add cinnamon and cumin, which are both brown spices. So don't let that fool you for being browned, okay? So just make sure that you guys are checking the doneness of them. You can go ahead and stick a fork in the potato to make sure that it is fork tender. And they still will have a little bite to them because we want them to hold their shape. If they're too tender, then they'll end up kind of like sweet potato mash, and we don't want a mash. We want a hash, okay? We want them all the separate pieces in there together, okay? My balsamic vinegar has all of a sudden kind of started a new sciencey thing. So let me show you. I don't know if you can see it super clearly, but it's starting to bubble in kind of like, sorry, I just got like a big nose full of balsamic vinegar. It's starting to bubble and you can see like it getting thick syrupy. Like I said, it might be a little bit difficult to see, but it's starting to stick to my scraper a little bit more as well. Yeah, that's the other thing about reducing balsamic vinegar, guys. You are definitely going to have a very vinegar smelling kitchen for at least a couple hours. But I do like to show people this, how easy this actually is. Just takes a little bit of time and attention. Okay. All right. So we'll let both of those things work before we come back to them to fry some potato latkes and worry about our balsamic reduction. Okay. All right, next on the list. I know we're moving fast, but again, an hour moves fast on these cooking classes. Our next recipe is going to be Christmas. And the Christmas recipe that I chose is a sweet. It's hard to have Christmas without some kind of dessert. And I chose a bonbon. So basically, a bonbon is a small sweet confection made usually like in a small ball coated in chocolate. The word actually originates from the French language and it simply means candy. And the first reports of bonbons were around about the 17th century or the 1600s when they were first made at the French royal court. So the one that I chose to do today is something that was a, a known and loved confection, Oreos. We're going to do a peppermint Oreo bonbon. Now, the reason too I chose peppermint is because peppermint is usually iconic with Christmas. Now, peppermint has a very, very long history across the world. Peppermint itself, the plant, is native to the Middle East and Europe, and it has been around forever. It's used a lot in medicinal uses, and they use it for a lot of different things. So, where did like this peppermint candy cane thing come in for Christmas time? Like, where does all of this connect? Okay. So, according to the official Oxford Companion to Sugar and Sweets, yes, there is like an actual like encyclopedia of confection, sugars and sweets. A local choir master in Cologne, Germany, sometime around 1670 or so, was looking for a way to keep rowdy young people quiet while they were watching the live nativity. And he asked a local confectioner to create a special hard candy for the kids to keep their mouths busy while the show was going on. So, see, we always thought kids were rotten. They also shaped it like a cane or like a shepherd's staff. Just to be reminiscent of the nativity. That history is a little more muddled. Some people say it was the shepherd's cane. Some people say it was just to hook it on a tree, like to decorate the tree. I like being kind of like I was a history minor in college and things, looking at the stories. The shepherd's cane, shepherd's staff actually makes a lot of sense, and as well does the peppermint. So peppermint was a very easy thing to get in Europe. It was very well known, so they made it into a confection and it stuck. The idea of peppermint candy canes stuck for Christmas time. So that's why we're going to use a little bit of peppermint candy canes and peppermint flavoring in order to do our Oreo bonbons, peppermint Oreo bonbons. Okay. So in order to do our peppermint Oreo bonbons, which is one of my family's favorite things to do, if you don't want to use candy canes, you don't have to. You can absolutely use sprinkles or nothing at all, totally up to you. You could also use a white chocolate or a milk chocolate or a dark chocolate if you want to as well. You can do non-peppermint Oreos. You can do golden Oreos, whatever you want to. So we're kind of combining American traditions and then European traditions to come up with this peppermint Oreo bonbon. Okay. So in order to do this, it's actually incredibly simple. Again, just takes a little bit of time and attention because it's kind of a process. This is a really fun recipe to do with kids because it's a lot of scooping and rolling and just very simple kitchen skill work that goes into this. So this is a really fun thing to do with kids in the kitchen as well. Let me check my balsamic vinegar before we move on with this one, just so that I can make sure that it is coming to temperature like I want it to. Yeah, it's definitely simmering like syrupy. Watch. Yeah, see how much it's reduced already? Don't you remember in the beginning, like how this whole pan was filled, even though I had it tilted? Now, keep in mind too, when you're making a reduction like this, you can keep letting go, and we got to be very careful that it doesn't burn because it will turn very quickly on you. I started with about a half a cup of balsamic vinegar, and then this is going to end up being only about an eighth to a quarter of a cup based on cooking all that water out. But in here, you can definitely see it bubble like it is actually cooking out the liquid, and it's just getting thicker and thicker. And there's less volume to it as I keep rotating that pan. This pan is also just kind of like on a medium heat, like a little simmer. That way it doesn't burn. Okay, and then when we turn off the heat, it will continue to thicken. So I'm actually going to turn this off probably in the next couple minutes just so that it'll continue to thicken on its own. Okay, all right. Let me do that so I don't forget about it. The oil here should be close to being done as well. Let me just double check our potatoes, see how far we are on the potato pan in the back here. Let's see. Oh yeah, look at that. That's how we know that oil is ready. Okay, so the potatoes are all bubbling and crisping up. So in order to make this latke, this is probably the hardest part of making these. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna take these out so they don't continue to cook and bubble in here. Okay, so what we need to do is we're gonna take a small handful of the potato and put it onto a flat spatula. And we're gonna kind of shape it onto that spatula and press it together into so that it does become like more coagulated together. Try to kind of get all those like wiry potato pieces out. We want it pretty flat so that it's pretty quick cooking. Okay, so not only is it like a batter on your spatula, let me grab a fork really quick. But then I can take my fork and I can literally just slide my latke right into the oil. And you can see how the top isn't actually submerged. It's just probably about the 2/3 of it is submerged. So I'm just going to take it again in my hand, kind of give it a little squeeze, get it onto my spatula, give it a press so that it all sticks together. And then we're going to get this into the, oops, this one's not together all the way. These will cook for a few minutes on each side, and then you're going to remove them to a paper towel lined plate. If you're making a whole bunch of these, you're probably going to want to put them on a baking sheet, and then you're going to want to get them in the oven. That one fell apart on me a little bit. Get them into the oven to keep them warm. Latkes are best fresh. I'm not a huge fan of leftover ones. They are actually not too bad, like in an air fryer as a refry, like a reheat on them. But they're just the best when they're fresh. You also don't want to crowd your pan, so I'm only going to do about 4 of these at one time. And they are pretty quick cooking. I love the look of a homemade latke because they're like kind of rustic. Awesome. Let me just wash my hands just so I'm full of potato pancake, and then we'll start flipping them. Perfect. So nice, crispy side. And then when that's done, we'll just move it over here so the oil can continue draining. Again, it's really not about the oil, or really about the potato. It's really about the oil in this tradition. Oh, that one I flipped a little early. That's okay. Keep in mind too, as you add food to oil like this, it does cool down the oil. Okay, so that's why we want to make sure that our oil is pretty screaming hot in order to make sure that it doesn't cool it down so much that the oil just starts to get like it makes the potatoes soggy. Just gonna check on our potatoes over here, other potatoes, our sweet potatoes over here. I think these are about ready to come out. So let's see. Oh yeah, these look great. They smell great too. These do look extra brown because of the seasoning on top, but that's going to be, you can see like there's some really nice oil on the bottom there too. It smells cinnamony, but not sweet, right? Because we added that cumin. But these definitely are beautiful consistency for our hash. We're going to finish dressing these here after we're done with our latkes. and after we're done with our bonbons as well, before we make our last dish, which is going to be our Kwanzaa mac and cheese. Okay. Thanks for being along on this journey with me today, guys. If you are not familiar with me or Classroom Kitchen, I do have a Facebook page that you can check me out on. Or I do have a website as well called Making Mealtime Memories. Oop, that one I flipped too early too. My heat not high enough? No, it's high. Just maybe not good heat distribution on that side. That one's better. And you can check me out there. So makingmealtimememories.com. It's at the bottom of your recipes, or you can find me on Facebook at Classroom Kitchen. And you can find out where I teach, what I teach. I was talking earlier in the beginning, winter is like my busiest time of the year because everyone's inside and has nothing better to do than learn how to cook. And so I do lots of different cooking classes. A lot of different ones are coming up, obviously through your library, and then other local libraries as well that you can join in on the fun. So please feel free to join me on my website, Making Mealtime Memories. Actually, I send a monthly newsletter out once a month, usually the last week or so of the month. Here's one of our latkes, beautiful, served with applesauce or sour cream. And I send out that newsletter and I post which libraries I'm going to be working with and what classes I'm going to be teaching. So then that way you can join in if you have any free time as well. I will be posting on my Facebook page as well, the final pictures of all of the recipes that we've made tonight. So you will get to see the final everything, the potato latkes, the mac and cheese, the bonbons, the potato hash, all the things that we're doing as we're cooking through these different holidays. Don't worry, I'm not going to cook through all of these potatoes. I'll do that after class. I just want to get through a few of these so that you guys understand what they're supposed to look like and how that oil is supposed to be too. You can see that these aren't super greasy in the sense that it didn't take on much oil, which is good. That means our oil was hot enough and we press out enough liquid. So they're going to be nice and crispy, but then tender on the inside as well. My favorite way to eat these is with sour cream. All right, we'll get that one out. This one is almost done too. I think the extra little press at the end kind of gave it a little extra help in that oil. There we go. I don't want to turn you off to this, but it kind of smells like White Castle in my kitchen right now. The potatoes and the onion and the oil, like, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing to you. It's a good thing to me. I like White Castle. I actually make a White Castle stuffing for Thanksgiving every year. Instead of bread, I use White Castle sliders minus the pickles and add celery and chicken broth and thyme. So that's a good thing to me, but it actually is kind of strange how it really it smells like White Castle right now. All right, there's our latkes, guys. A really nice, again, not very difficult, just a little bit time consuming in the sense that it takes some time and preparation in order to make something like this happen. Okay, so really pretty. While we're dressing things and kind of finishing off recipes, go ahead and actually finish off our potato Brussels sprout dish. Let me go ahead and grab a baking dish so I can transfer this goodness in here. And again, this is what's so great about this dish is you can make it ahead of time, right? So I can make this a day ahead of time and then just warm it up on Thanksgiving Day if I wanted to. All right, yeah, I'll use this spoon. There we go. So really pretty Brussels sprouts, potatoes. We're gonna come in here with some dried cherries. What I love about the cherries versus cranberries is they're much larger. Obviously, cherries are larger than cranberries. So they're a nice bite in a dish like this. We don't want to overwhelm them with cherries, but we do want to kind of add that like nice sweet tart flavor to them. I'm also going to add some pecans. You can also do walnuts if you want to as well. But this just looks so festive. And then the last piece is going to be our beautiful balsamic drizzle that we reduced. You can see how little liquid is in this pan compared to what I started with. And we're just going to pour this over the top. Yum. There you have it, guys. Latkes for Hanukkah and hash for Thanksgiving. Okay. So we are halfway there and we have two very simple recipes left to go.
I wish I could smell it.
It is incredible, especially that cinnamon cumin combination.
I'm sure.
Yeah, that is something that I guess I really feel like is very underrated, and that combination is so soul warming and just very, very harvesty smelling. Like I said, that smells like White Castle, which is very good to me. Don't know if it's good for you, but that's what it smells like. This again, just very warm, rich, delicious flavors as well. So I guess you guys are gonna have to make it in order to smell it, right? All right, we'll move these two dishes off to the side so we can work on our Oreo bonbons. All right, so the Oreo bonbons I already actually just pulverized in my blender. You can use a food processor as well, but we want it to look like a dough, okay? So these are actually mint Oreos. I don't know, I got some kind of party size. So I used half of this package in my blender and 4 ounces of softened cream cheese. And that's the filling for this. So you would never even know they are necessarily peppermint until you actually bit into one, which is why I like to put the crushed peppermint on the outside of it so people know that it's peppermint. I have a 2 tablespoon cookie scoop. So I'm just going to come in here with it, drop it into my hand, and I'm going to work it with my hand. Just kind of make sure that it's nice and compact, and then roll it into a nice smooth ball. And as we roll these are then going to go in the fridge or freezer. However, if you want it quicker, it's going to be freezer time, about 10-15 minutes. Fridge is going to be about a half an hour to really just firm these up so that we can actually dip them in chocolate and roll them in peppermint. If we were to try to dip these in chocolate now, they would just fall apart. Okay, so I'm going to just roll out about 6 of these just so you guys get the idea behind them. Again, you can use any kind of Oreo cookie you want for this recipe. You don't have to use the mint ones. You can add different extracts to these if you want to. You can use any kind of melting chocolate for the outside of it. The point of these, though, is they are supposed to be about 2-biter truffles. So it takes about 2 or 3 bites to get through them. You can obviously make them smaller, but that would take a lot more rolling and dipping. So unless you're super patient or you want little teeny tiny little treats, I like making them about this size. All right. I would say these make probably about 16-ish of this size, 12 to 16 little bonbons, but they are very rich. One time I ate 2 of them because I thought I needed 2 of them and I had a bellyache. So just be aware that they are very rich, especially when we dip them in chocolate. All right, so these bonbons are going to go in the freezer, and that's going to be actually the last thing that you're going to see here with me tonight is going to be the finished bonbons. All right, get those guys in there. Perfect. All right, the last recipe that we're going to pull together is going to be our baked mac and cheese for Kwanzaa. Now, when I was doing research about Kwanzaa, the thing about Kwanzaa is the foods for Kwanzaa are different depending on what part of the world you're from. Okay. So I decided to go with more of a Southern style Kwanzaa. You can have North African food. You can have Caribbean food. There's so many different types of like Kwanzaa food. So I went with something that might be a little bit more versatile across different holidays and stayed a little bit more local. There also is a really big like red beans and rice kind of recipe that's made. But again, just really that like soul food, warming food, comfort food type of food that's served at the Kwanzaa celebration. So I decided again to do the mac and cheese. Mac and cheese was actually brought to the US by Thomas Jefferson when he tried it in Italy. He actually drew sketches of it in his notebook, and we actually don't know where he went. We don't know if he was in Paris or Italy, but he was in Europe, and he was inspired and brought down these sketches and these notes back about it. And he actually he even had a macaroni extruder shipped back to the States to make this meal. He had his chef make it from his notes. The chef's name was James Hennings, and he's actually the uncredited creator of mac and cheese in the US, like the US version of mac and cheese. And so Jefferson's chef, James Hennings, was the one that actually created the US version of mac and cheese. He actually, like I said, he discovered it in Europe, and he had it cooked in preparation for some elite guests that he had at his home. And then since then, it's just completely taken off. Kraft Foods introduced mac and cheese in a box in 1937 when we were really in the throes of the Great Depression. The box could serve 4 people for 19 cents at the time. And the company sold about 8 million boxes of its quick and easy macaroni. And then we had the rationing in effect during World War II. And so the box mix continued to gain popularity. And now we have this standalone mac and cheese dish as well that is celebrated. And it is, again, one of the soul foods of a traditional Southern Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa being the celebration of different traits of an honest an honest person. Okay, and so there's different candles that are lit similar to Hanukkah. There's different songs that are sung. There's many days of Kwanzaa, and this actually starts the day after Christmas Day. And usually I believe it's a 3-day 3-day long celebration. And like I said, different colors and different candles and different traditions are done on each one of those days, celebrating different traits of a person. So let's look at a good old fashioned mac and cheese. We're using some Velveeta cheese because that's the way to get it creamy and keep it creamy. We're going to start it on the stovetop, but then finish it in the oven. So when we start it on the stovetop, we want to make sure that it's in a pan that is oven safe. Okay, whether that be in a cast iron or whether that be in a stovetop to oven kind of cookware. Make sure you can. Or if you want to transfer it to a baking dish, like you saw me do with the potatoes and Brussels sprouts, you can absolutely do that too. But this does go in the oven for a baked element, and it will go under the broiler. So we want to make sure something that we're using is oven safe. Okay. All right, let's go back to the stovetop one more time. You guys have been good sports about the back and forth here tonight, but we have lots of stovetop cooking with these recipes here. And I'm just going to shuffle my pans around a little bit so I can cook on my burner. Do you guys have a favorite burner to cook on? I do. Actually, my favorite burner to cook on is the right or the left front burner. But that doesn't work. This is actually my studio kitchen, and that actually doesn't work in this kitchen. I have to cook on the right front burner, which is always a little bit backwards to me. So it's just kind of funny. I know my actual favorite burner though is the left front burner. All right, we'll get this in here. So I have 2 tablespoons of butter that we're going to go ahead and melt down, and we're actually going to make a roux. A roux is a thickening agent in mac and cheese. So it's going to be butter, 2 tablespoons of melted butter, and then we're going to add some flour to it. And a lot of people don't know this, but flour is actually raw. And so when you make a roux, we actually want to make sure that we're cooking the flour. If you don't cook the flour, then it's going to taste raw. And even though you might not know that's what you're tasting, that's what you're tasting. So you want to make sure that you cook your flour through into your melted butter when you add your flour to make your roux. Now, after we make our roux, which is the melted butter and the flour, we're then going to add in our milk to this as well. And then we're going to add in our Velveeta cheese and then our cooked pasta. Okay, so the pasta is going to be cooked ahead of time. The baked element comes from a panko and Parmesan cheese topping that when it's put under the broiler, it makes like a crusty top to it. And then that ends up being your baked element. That's the kind of mac and cheese I like. I like a creamy, ooey gooey mac and cheese inside and a crunchy layer on top. That's probably one of my favorite ways to eat mac and cheese. And I'll even surpass the crunchy top sometimes too. That doesn't even, like, it's not even a necessity. But if it's a creamy mac and cheese, then you have me sold. All right, 2 tablespoons of flour. And then we're just going to whisk this into our butter. A roux is always made out of like a flour and a fat, whether that be like a drippings, drippings from a meat or butter or oil, but you do need a fat in your roux. It shouldn't be clumpy. It should be smooth, like you're seeing in my pan here. If it is clumpy, that means that you don't have enough liquid. So you might need to add more of your fat in order to get your liquid it back to this consistency. I'm going to add a tad more flour just because I do have some butter kind of sitting in the corners here that I want to incorporate that hasn't incorporated yet. There we go. And we're just going to cook this for about a minute. That is enough to kind of cook the flour. Perfect. And then once we add our milk to this, that's actually technically called a bechamel sauce. Bechamel sauce is a white cream sauce. And so you can see this is starting to bubble. And then when we add this, we could actually create a beautiful pasta dish out of just the roux and the cream. And that's a bechamel sauce. And you can create a beautiful pasta dish just with that. But we're going to take it a step further and add our Velveeta cheese, about 4 ounces of it. Okay, so we're going to let this simmer a little bit so that the milk actually gets thickened to make that bechamel sauce. I'm going to grab a knife as well so I can cut up my Velveeta a little bit more. I want to throw the whole block in there. I want to cut it down a little bit. I actually saw this crazy cooking video the other day. It was from, oh goodness, I think it was dated 1983. And it was a Kraft commercial for Velveeta. And it was probably the most disgusting looking thing I've ever seen. Please, so if I'm offending you with that, I apologize that if you ate this growing up or you made this for your own families, but it was a tuna casserole and they mixed in crushed pineapple. And I love food history, so I always look up these crazy videos. It was a commercial for the Velveeta cheese. Crushed pineapple into the tuna casserole, whatever was mixed in there. It was kind of hard to see what was in there. And then they mixed in, that was it. So it was the tuna and the pineapple. And then they melted down Velveeta and poured it over the top of the tuna noodle casserole. Then they added like slivered almonds on top of it. And I was like, that is just so much going on in that recipe. I don't even know what to think about that recipe. So this is as far as you'll see me using Velveeta in the kitchen is like for like a rotel sauce for like game day or in mac and cheese. But man, there were some creative test chefs with that tuna noodle casserole. I don't know who they tested it on, but it just definitely, they say you always eat with your eyes first. And I would have not eaten that because it did not look appetizing at all. Anyway, let's add our Velveeta in here. And this is now going to be a cheese sauce. Okay, so we went from a bechamel to a cheese sauce. Remember, we started with the roux, we added our cream, created that bechamel, and now we have an official cheese sauce for our mac and cheese, okay? We're gonna let the Velveeta melt down, and then we're gonna go ahead and add in our 8 ounces of cooked pasta that I already pre-cooked for us. Then we're gonna put our Parmesan and panko over the top and then broil it for just a minute or two just to get that creamy top in there, okay? While this is cooking down, I'm actually going to melt our chocolate for our Oreo bonbons. Remember, if when you melt chocolate, you want to do it in intervals. You don't want to just blast it for 2 or 3 minutes. That is going to give you clumpy or burnt chocolate. You actually want to melt it in, you can start at 1 minute and then you add 30-second intervals in order to continue melting it. So now you can see this is turning more yellow. It's crazy what a few simple ingredients do. Now you can absolutely use shredded cheese in this too, but it will not remain creamy. The Velveeta, when you rewarm it, will still be creamy. That's the luxury of that processed cheese. But if you want to use the shredded cheese, you absolutely can. I highly recommend you shred your own cheese though, because it doesn't melt as nicely if it's pre-shredded. Okay, so shredding your own is going to create a much nicer effect than if you buy the pre-grated stuff. We're going to add in our, I'm actually going to give my pasta a little rinse. It got a little sticky sitting there. Kind of wake it back up a little bit. There we go. Perfect. The pasta is just slightly undercooked by like a minute. And the reason is because it's going in this hot cheese sauce. So that hot cheese sauce will kind of continue to cook that pasta. And then it's going to go in a really hot oven for a couple minutes as well. So again, under baking your pasta is key to get a really nice bite to your pasta and not having it like mushy. All right, let me turn this off. Let me turn the broiler on. Perfect. And then I have our panko and Parmesan cheese topping. That's just going to go right over the top of this. And it's going to just give it a really nice crunch. I like this recipe too because you can absolutely double, triple, quadruple it and still get a really decent amount, a really good, it's an easy recipe to double, triple, quadruple, whatever you need. All right, our chocolate is just about melted. I'm probably going to do about another 30 seconds on this. I'm just doing like a milk chocolate. This is like an almond bark, actually. All right, let's throw this in the oven under a broiler. This is going to go really fast, guys, so we don't want to forget about this guy in the oven. Perfect. All right, last step, guys, and then you are free. Thank you for being patient and hanging out with me here tonight. I was hoping you get a, bang for your buck on a class like this. All right, so our Oreo bonbons are much firmer now. Chocolate is ready to go. We're gonna use a fork though. Perfect. Okay, so chocolate, let's give it a quick mix. If there's any chunks of chocolate, just give it a mix and the residual heat from the other chocolate will just kind of give it a melt. All right, so for these guys, we want to go ahead and drop them in and then we're going to roll them around in our chocolate, scoop it up with our fork, give it a nice tap on the side. Now this bark melts pretty quick or cools pretty quickly. So I'm actually going to go in with the peppermint right away. I just bought those like Starkist peppermint candies and crushed them up with a meat tenderizer. So I'm just going to go in and just give them a little sprinkle of peppermint so people know exactly what they're getting when they get their Oreo bonbons. Lots of taps on the side. That's the key to a good drip on your chocolate. Little sprinkle. Perfect. I'm going to check our mac and cheese because the broiler is going to go really fast on us and I don't want it burned. Yep, perfect. All right, see? A nice little brown on the top of it, bubbly around the sides, and this is delicious. So you could actually make this mac and cheese ahead of time and then wait to brown it on whatever day you're celebrating with this mac and cheese. All right, guys, I am sufficiently wiped out from 4 recipes. I hope you guys had a great time with me here tonight. We did potato pancake, potato latkes. We did our hash. We did a mac and cheese. We did Oreo bonbons. Covered all the holidays. I hope you picked up something really cool and interesting that you want to share with friends and family, or even just making your own recipes for the holidays too. Again, you can follow me on Facebook at Classroom Kitchen or find me on my website, makingmealtimememories.com. And I hope to see you guys around this winter sometime.
Thank you so much. Anybody having any questions on the recipes? Thank you everybody for coming in and joining us on this cold, feels like winter night. It was actually perfect for this warm and cozy recipes. Thank you so much.
You are very welcome, Dad and Ange. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy
Stay
Thanksgiving,
safe.
everybody.
You are very welcome. Everyone have a wonderful, safe Thanksgiving, and we'll catch you around.
Catch you around. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.